and her little secret. Author Sunita Bhamray. Illustrator Divya George. At the far edge of the forest near a large muddy pond is a wooden fence. Inside the fence stands a big brick building surrounded by small cottages and sheds. A large number of people live here and do a lot of good work. The big building has a student hostel, a school and a hospital. In the hostel lives a little girl called Saru. Saru is playful and ready to run, skip and jump ever so often. A boy called Mangu lives at the hostel too. Mangu is Saru's best friend, but unlike her he is timid and does not run about as much. Saru has 3 more friends who live in the cottages nearby. They are Hari, Manik and Ketki. Hari's father works as a driver, Manik's parents work at the hospital, and Ketki's mother is a teacher at the school. Then, there is Mai, she is the caretaker of the children. Mai has eyebrows, which are always crossed over each other, and she has a booming voice whenever she calls out to Saru. If you were to pass by the hostel, you would be sure to hear Mai calling out to Saru at any time of the day. This is because Saru was never where she was meant to be. She was always away in the woods or near the pond. Now that we know all about the people in the story, let us begin, not at the very beginning but on a bright sunny morning in the month of May. Saru pulled down the yellow sheet from her eyes as she heard the sounds of the pots and pans in the kitchen. She jumped out from her bed. Soon, Saru ate a rice gruel and got ready for the day. It was a school holiday. The day was definitely going to be a very good one, Saru knew. Whenever there was no school, Saru was sure to have plenty of fun. There were times when a passerby would sit under the shady tree or take a nap. But there was no one around this morning. Saru was glad she was alone. She knew that if anyone from the hostel saw her, she would have to answer a dozen questions, and she was sure that there would be a good scolding in store for her. Saru's favorite pastime by the pond was to catch dragonflies. The long-winged insects looked just like helicopters that she had seen in pictures before, and catching them by their delicate wings was just the right kind of fun she was looking for. 1 down, 2 down, and many more down. Saru would carefully hold her fingers towards the dragonfly as it hovered over the reeds, and snap her fingers at great speed to catch the buzzing insect. Then she would sit it down on the sticky leaves of the bushes nearby. The dragonfly would be stuck to the leaf for a few minutes and then fly away. While Saru was busy snapping up the dragonflies, she heard a scratching sound in the bushes nearby. In a moment the sound grew louder, and Saru could see the bushes moving. A curious girl by nature, Saru peered through the bushes to see what the sound was about. As she moved the branches out of the way, Saru came face to face with a tiny creature with the biggest eyes and the funniest shape ever. It looked like a little baby deer with the body of a large mouse. The little animal was startled to see Saru and tried to scamper away but couldn't do so. Its legs seemed to be caught in something below. As Saru stared at it in amazement, she could see the poor animal frightened and trying hard to get free and escape. The more it tried to do so, the more it seemed to be trapped. It pulled and pulled till it could do no more and sank down into the bushes. She pushed the bushes away some more and looked below at the tired animal lying in a heap. The little strange animal had got its hind leg trapped in a long vine from the tree above. Saru carefully unwound the vine from its leg and freed it. But the poor deer was wounded and didn't move. Feeling sorry for the animal, she decided to carry it home and nurse it back to health. As Saru walked back to the building with the mouse-like animal in her arms, she spotted Mai standing in the veranda, looking out for her. Sensing trouble, Saru made a dash for the tractor shed nearby. She knew that one look at the little animal in her hands, and Mai would tell her to leave it in the woods. Mai didn't like anything little, people or animals. After Mai had grown tired of calling to Saru and had returned inside, Saru gingerly stepped around the building and carried the frightened creature inside the shed adjoining it. This shed housed the large pots, pans, ladles, and vessels that were needed for cooking large and special meals on festival days. Pilu looked a great deal sturdier later in the evening. He had been fed another round of milk after he had nibbled at the bakery that Manik had sneaked in. As night fell, the friends tucked Pilu under the folds of a jute bag and headed to their beds. The children spent a restless night, while Pilu slept peacefully in his new home. Before long it was morning and the excited children went straight to the shed. Pilu was sitting up, his head bobbing over the rim of the large pot. The children sat down for some important discussions. They whispered to each other. They argued. Mai had glared at them when she had passed by and wondered what they were up to. Seeing nothing amiss, she had continued on her way. Pilu had been good and had managed to stay in his pot and out of trouble. They spent the evening playing with Pilu, who was strong enough to stand up now. His legs seemed to be healing well. Days passed by and each day Pilu grew fatter and healthier. Soon Pilu grew friskier too. He seemed to want to be out of his pot more, and the children began to panic. They were certain that if someone spotted Pilu, that would be the end of their secret. They were also worried about Pilu's strange growth. They wondered why Pilu continued to look like a large mouse and hadn't grown into a deer as yet. It was probably because they had kept him for so long in the pot, they fretted sadly. A few days later there was chaos. It was late in the night and everybody was asleep when, suddenly, there was a loud clanking sound. The sound rang out from Pilu's shed and it woke up all the people. Everyone ran towards the shed. And there he was. Little Pilu stood in the center of the shed looking around with his large loopy eyes. He had probably tried to get out of the pot and had overturned a lot of other pots and pans. The room looked a real mess. Comforted by his gentleness, the children told him how they had found Pilu and how they had taken care of him. They also said they were worried about how tiny their little deer was. Could it be because they had kept him in the pot, they asked. He laughed gently when he heard this. The kind man told the children that the little animal that they had looked after so well was actually a mouse deer and not a deer. The children were most surprised to learn that their Pilu was in fact not a baby deer, and was always going to look as he did, a bit like a mouse, a bit like a pig, a bit like a deer. The elders decided to let the children keep Pilu at the hostel. The kind man announced that an animal shelter would be built there. There were squeals of delight from the happy children. A month later, an animal shelter was built for sick and needy animals from the forest. Little Pilu began to live there forever. If you go up to the hostel one day, you just may see Pilu playing with Saru and her friends.